Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome, everybody, to An Ear for Men. I'm Paul Elam, and tonight I'm going to be chatting for a few minutes as I sit in front of my luxurious, richly appointed green sheet. I bet you don't have one like it, and if you do, I feel sorry for you. No, anyway, just kidding, folks. I've been playing with the green screen, and so tonight this is what you get. But I'm with the one and only Steve Brule from Studio Brule. How you doing, Steve?
Hi, Paul. I'm doing good.
Really glad to have you here. Just so you folks know, if you came by the men's movement after November of 2012 because of a really interesting little feminist pissy fit outside of Warren Farrell's lecture there at the University of Toronto, where it was actually more than just a pissy fit. They were assaulting police and harassing people and abusing people and blocking doors. There was a young and aspiring videographer who just happened to be on the scene. Well, he was aspiring anyway. And he managed to capture not only the moment of all the protests, but interview some people afterward in a video that went very, very viral. It actually is a video that helped put A Voice for Men on the map. Steve Brule was the one who took it. And I guess we all owe you a debt for that, Steve.
Oh, thanks, Paul.
What was that night like, just out of curiosity? I mean, because at the time, I know you well enough to know that you wouldn't have dreamed of calling yourself a men's rights activist or anything like that. You were just there out of curiosity. What was that like, seeing that near riot unfold in front of you over a guy like Warren Farrell?
Well, and on the first comment, at that time I didn't know there was such a thing as men's right activist or a men's right movement. So I was totally surprised. I really didn't even expect a protest, and being an academic lecturer on a Friday night, I didn't expect even very many people to attend. So when I got there, I actually, and some people may have heard this story already, and I apologize if it's repetitive, but when I got there, I thought, hey, from a distance, I thought it was a lineup to get in, which surprised me. Being a Friday night, students are usually doing other things.
But what on earth would students be doing on Friday night other than going to a lecture?
Just about anything else. But so when I got close enough, and I saw there was megaphones and placards and protesters, I just went and got my camera and thought, well, I'll see what I can grab, and that's where it went from there.
And what was I understand your interest as a videographer and of somebody that likes capturing events, but what was sort of the, if you will, the emotional reaction or even intellectual reaction you had to seeing this level of hostility outside of a lecture about the boy crisis?
Well, I was, surprised and a little bit shocked, I guess, to see how some of the protesters treated some men who really just wanted to hear the talk, and some women as well. But especially that fellow whose friends had committed suicide. What really shocked me was that it wasn't the primary concern for the feminists who I interviewed there, wasn't that this fellow should get some help or be able to get some help about he was obviously depressed looking, but that it should come from a feminist venue.
Right.
This was really important, more important to them, and it was the only thing they focused on, was that he should seek help from a feminist venue, not from a venue that he chooses.
Yeah, I watched that video. I don't know, I've lost count of how many times I've watched that video, and I remember her words pretty much verbatim. She says, feminism has spaces set aside for that.
Yeah.
With the implication being that if he wanted to try to process his grief about a friend's suicide, he had to do it under feminist direction, or he wouldn't be allowed to do it at all. And I mean, and at this point, I was already longtime MRA, right? I was shocked at that. at seeing anybody assert that somebody looking for help, trying to understand the death of two friends, had to do it under their direction or they couldn't get help. I was just like, I thought I'd seen it all. And then I figured out I hadn't.
Yeah. The other thing, I mean, I agree with you. And for me, I mean, everybody knows about the feminist movement, whether you knew about MRAs or not. The other thing that I found there, which I think comes out in the video, but a little more subtly, that some of those young women were who were only at the university for a few months were sent to protest by their women's studies professors. They were specifically directed by a professor at the university to go and do this, which I thought, I was kind of shocked at that. And they didn't know of Warren Farrell other than the professor told them that he said something about it's okay to rape. They really didn't know anything. And in fact, if in one of the videos I recorded of other protesters, also at University of Toronto, was of Paul Nathanson and Young. City TV was interviewing one of the protesters and asked her if she had read Warren Farrell's book, because she was talking about how angry she was at people like Warren Farrell. So the interviewer, it was I forget the woman's name, but she's City TV, a Toronto news station, asked her point blank, "Have you read Warren Farrell's book?" And she said, "No, I have no intention of reading it." Well, I mean, that tells you a lot. And another one that we interviewed there, and this I think is in one of my videos as well. I think it was, I had a young woman, Ronnie, who was asking questions for me while I did the video work. And she asked, "Do you know who's talking tonight?" And she said, "I think it's somebody named Warren Farrell." And it was Paul Nathanson and Young. They didn't know why they were protesting or who was even speaking that they were protesting about. There's a network in Toronto, especially, of social justice warriors who simply respond to the call to protest. And they don't even often know who they're protesting, why, or what the topic is.
Well, maybe let's assume they go out for latte and scones after the protest and then start figuring out why they were there and what they were so passionate about. Because,
well, if you ask them, if you ask them, they'll say rape culture. Of course, this is a blanket, right? It works for everything.
Okay, let me move on a little bit more toward really one of the main reasons I wanted to have this hangout tonight. I wanted to invite Steve on to talk. Steve has a crowdfunder going now. There is a link in the low bar. He wants to attend and to document any possible protests and to document, you know, some interviews and some of the events around ICMI coming up in London this July 8th through the 10th. Now, Mike Buchanan of Justice for Men and Boys has the actual speakers, has the videography of that covered. So this sort of allows Steve to roam around with his camera and do what Steve does best. And let me say a couple of reasons why I think you should. I have given money to this, and I know that several other people have. Steve is nearly halfway to his goal of getting there, and we want to push that toward the end. But let me explain why. One, making quality, really good videos is freaking hard. I can tell you, I've been at this now for quite a while with a lot of help from Steve, that he's just donated his time to help educate me and mentor me in how to produce these things, what equipment to buy and everything like that. And I can tell you that if you look at a high quality video on YouTube or something, on the internet or on television, I can promise you that a lot more goes into that than you could possibly imagine. It is difficult, and it requires a lot of talent, a lot of skills, and a whole lot of expensive equipment that you have to transport places to get things done. And if you look at Steve's work, even just at the Warren Farrell protests, but at the other protests that he's covered at Kennesaw State, the interviews that he did there, the series that he produces with Janice Fiamingo, which is one of the best things going in the movement right now, you see a polished professional videographer. And I personally want him to be able to make it to London. Unfortunately, I mean, it's like we are an activist outfit. I had to shell out of my own coffers just to get to the conference myself. I'm not being paid to speak there. Nobody's being paid to speak there. So we have to get all these people transported halfway around the world in some cases to get them there. And I can't think of somebody that the more important part of making this thing happen and be on the record in the way it possibly can be. Now, I'm going to be there with a video camera and a microphone. And so I invite you after the conference, watch my interviews and then watch Steve's, and you'll see why we wanted Steve there. It'll be very, very apparent to you. But this is a really important deal. This is our second big conference coming up. We have a lot of important announcements to make at it. It is nearly sold out at this point. You can still get tickets in the sidebar at ABFM. But if you're going, or even if you're not going, and you want to support getting Steve Brule there for that important presence of a professional videographer who has passion about the men's movement, to be there interviewing people and documenting the spirit of what happens in the conference, if not the talks, then please go to the low bar of this hangout, click on there and throw a little something in the tip jar for Steve. It would be very much appreciated. And I know Steve wouldn't pitch you that hard for the money, but I don't care. I will. Do you want to add anything to that, Steve?
Well, I am pitching through Fund Anything. So yeah, I'm a bit, I'm not very comfortable with fundraising. It's foreign to me. But unfortunately, it's a reality for this sort of thing, especially right now. As anybody who tries to make a living or at least partial living doing video and activism of any kind, it's scraping 2 cents together day by day in this stuff. So yeah, money's always a problem.
Yep,
and I just would mention that I did change one of the rewards on the Fund Anything, and this is a pretty expensive one. I've had a couple of inquiries about it, the $600 reward. With that, one of the feedbacks I got from somebody who's interested is that they weren't sure they wanted to deliver it themselves or could come to ICMI or Kingston or whatever. So I did alter that one, that if they wanted, I would present it on camera myself. If they write the script, and I will create if I'm doing it myself here in Kingston, I'll do it with the green screen and the whole bit, produce a Flamengo file style episode of their script. So that's the reward at the, and I'll keep that open right up to the conference.
Can you tell us about the other reward levels for the fundraiser? What can people expect for different levels of contribution? Yeah,
the first level is at $25. I'll ask a question during an interview, one-on-one interview with one of the speakers, speaker of your choice, question of your choice, and the interviews will all be published on Studio Brule YouTube. And I've had some interesting questions already.
I've even got.
And then the next reward is, I think it's $125, and it's a copy of Janice Flamengo's upcoming book that should come out in 2017, and that's Sons of Feminism.
Can you tell us a little more about that book, just so that people know? Because I think most people watching this, anything by Janice, they're going to be interested in anyway.
Janice is a powerful intellect, and probably as powerful as her intellect is her ability to clearly put a story out, a compelling story that you want to listen to and that makes a point. And so she's soliciting stories of how feminism has affected your life, whether, I think it's predominantly men, and men's stories. And then she will edit them and compile them into a book. So it will be, I guess, basically a book of essays in the words of men themselves, and how feminism over the past 30, 40 years, or whatever your story, wherever in that timeline your story takes place. And so you'll be able to buy that book. And men who are listening who may have a powerful story, you can contribute. You can contact Janice. I think it's via mengo@uottawa.ca. And the best place to get information about what that's about is episode 40 of the Flamingo File is specifically called Sons of Feminism. And Janice reads on that some very short excerpts of men's stories, which if you read it, they can't fail to move you. And
that is a powerful video.
It's a powerful video, and I think it's around 20,000 views already, and it's only 1 week since it's been out, which is pretty good for a series like the Flamengo File. And the stories, the excerpts she reads are very powerful, and I think what's really important, and I've been getting a lot of inquiries through the Studio Brule website and channel about stories like that, and there are a ton of stories. And up until recently, men are very reluctant to say anything at all about these stories for a variety of reasons. And I know you know a lot of those reasons, Paul, working in the area that you do. So, you could speak to that, I'm sure, at length, and episode after episode, of the reasons why men don't complain. Or maybe it's not even complain. They don't even tell their story. Their story dies with the man. And we want to stop that.
It goes back even, Steve, to the name of the organization and the website being A Voice for Men, because of the very thing that you're talking about.
We've got to stop. I think one of the things I think this book is aiming at, and that I think is important too, is that not let these stories die with the men who have them. These stories are locked up and they're in graves everywhere right now.
Yes, some of the graves we hear about, like Earl Silverman and such, but most of them are just anonymous ghosts now. And I don't want to say their lives were wasted, because they certainly weren't, but their stories have gone unnoticed. And there's, we found the same thing out with Dr. Paul Mathieu doing 2 years in a row during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, a series called In His Own Words, where she took submissions, one every day, and published one from men who were victims of domestic violence and who then became victims again of the criminal justice and family court system after they were abused by their wives. Many of them, some of the most heartbreaking stories in the world. And of course, I don't make it any secret. I have a big crush on Janice. I think she's just absolutely amazing. And she is the right person to do this book. There's no doubt about it.
I agree 100%. And I do remember Dr. T's, I guess that's her common name, right? Dr. T, Palmache. I remember her daily story thing. That was a couple of years ago, was it? Did you say?
Yep. Well, there was 2 years running. It was, I believe, 12 and 13.
And the thing I just want to emphasize for any men who are listening out there right now, I think we have a few viewers, that your story, if you've been through something like this, and almost every man has been through something that can be traced to the impact of feminism in our culture today. If you have a story, just keep in mind that somebody could benefit from hearing your story. So it is better to speak it out if you can get yourself there.
Amen. I couldn't agree more. So are there other benefits? You have the $25 gets a question that you will ask somebody that you interview at ICMI in London this July. $125 gets a copy of Janice Fiamingo's The Sons of Feminism, which is upcoming in 2017. And then $600 will get you either an in-person video shot by Steve Brule, or he will green screen himself and take your script and tell your story. And express what you want to say. Is there any other levels? Do you have like a $50 or $75 contribution?
I don't right now, but if you keep in line with it, I'm going to keep those ones there. But I will try to think of other ones that people might be interested in, and if I can come up with something, I'll add them in there. I just there's a lot of things going on outside of this conference, as you know, Paul.
Yep.
So I just had a lot of trouble getting this campaign moving, and I should have had it moving months ago, really. So I tried to get this up as quickly as possible this week because it's really down to the wire. So those were the only three that really quickly came to my mind, and but I'm open to suggestions.
Well, the biggest suggestion I think that we can give is that people go in and don't think that $5 is too little to chip in. Steve is, and I think he's put a very conservative estimate. His fundraising goal is $3,000. He's nearly halfway there. I don't know how you do that for $3,000. I know that.
Well, yeah, it is. It does sound like a lot on the surface because, if you go.
Well, no, it doesn't to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I've just gotten through paying. I bought my own ticket and made my own hotel reservation, and between that and all the stuff that comes in with traveling from Houston to London, how you manage to keep this at $3,000 is pretty impressive. That's what I meant to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Paul. It is. There's a lot of expenses, and of course, traveling with video equipment means overweight and oversized charges on the airlines as well. So, and then there's dealing with the travel in London. So, I think I can do it for that. Of course, after the fees that goes along with fundraising, you don't get the full amount. I'm not sure exactly how much you get out of it. It's maybe. You've done this fundraising before, 85% or something you might get or something?
No, you actually do a little better than that. You'll have about 9% from Crowdfunder removed, and then you have to contend with what, PayPal likes their slice.
Yeah, I think it's 4% on PayPal.
But the point I was trying to make is that Steve has cut this to bare bones. It's obvious he's not. What he's trying to do is get the expense of producing this for the men's movement, just the basic cost taken care of. And I hope that enough people jump in and help him out, because this is, like I said, I don't want the community that can't make it to the conference, the ones that are going to count on seeing all this stuff that happens after it, I don't want them to rely on my videos. I want them to see Steve Brule's videos after it, because these are important documents. We are in the middle of making history here in a way for men that's never been done before, and I'd like to see the best possible record of it kept. So I really do hope that you will throw in some change, throw in $1, throw in $5, throw in $100 if you can. Get $1.25, $125 gets you Janice Fiamingo's book. Get Steve to ask somebody a question, have him make a video of you or about what you have to say. But let's get this guy to London this July. It won't be the same without Steve Brule there. If you've been watching all these protests that have been documented through the years, and it's one of our most powerful weapons, is feminist behavior on public display. It's feminists being captured doing what they do that has grown our movement more than anything. And Steve has been the one capturing most of that for us. That's why this is so important. And if you want to know the difference, you look at the videos that he makes and the videos he's taken of protesters, and then compare that to the video you have of Triglipuff. That's the difference. And we want to see the quality out there so that people can enjoy this for years to come. Okay, I'll quit beating that dead horse. Just never mind. Your kids don't need to go to college. Send Steve to London instead.
Thank you for that vote of confidence, Paul. And I do agree too. This is history happening here, fellows. The men's issues are getting on the table slowly, but they are getting on the table and they're getting attention. And even in some of the sort of more established news outlets, they're starting to be taken seriously. I'm not going to declare a battle won by any stretch here.
No mission accomplished banner on the deck of the ship.
No. Because there's just no shortage of ridicule of men. And that's been going on since the beginning of time too. But what I also want to point out is that if possible, while I'm there, I do have some agendas over there on top of the conference. The conference is, of course, the prime reason to go. But I do have a couple of other documentaries that I am in the middle of producing that I'm not going to talk about in detail at the moment, but these documentaries can be advanced significantly if I can get to London, particularly around the people who are going to be at that conference and in that area. So I'll just leave that at that.
So this is a lot more than just, I mean, it's not like it's not worth it just for documenting the conference, but you're saying that this plays a role in a lot more material to come.
There's a couple of other documentaries, I think fairly big documentaries that I've been picking away at and chipping away at for some time now. And of course, the conference is going to be the 100% main focus. I won't shortchange any coverage of the conference for anything else. But any money or above or beyond the cost of the conference, I'll try to use as an opportunity to do what I need to do in London and England to help push forward those other documentaries. So, for instance, if by good stroke it goes past 3,000, that would give me some leeway to perhaps travel to other locations where I can capture some important footage. So I'm just throwing that out there. But of course, the main 100% focus of this fundraising is, of course, to cover whatever happens at that conference, and that will be where my attention is while I'm there.
Well, all I can say to if you feminists or if you want to come protest, by all means, Mr. DeMille is ready for your close-up.
And if any feminists are listening, which I seriously doubt, I will.
Well, there's listening and there's hearing. There's some listening. They're not hearing a damn thing.
I make this pledge, though. I will listen to you. If you're a feminist and you're protesting, or you're going to come to the conference and ask questions or whatever, I will listen to you, and I will, if you want to have me interview you, I will publish the entire interview as I have at the KSUM conference. I will let you have your 100% say. I'm classed now by a lot of people as an MRA, and I think, Paul, you and I spoke about this some time ago. I didn't class myself as an MRA at any particular point in time. I'm interested in the truth. And the reality is today that feminists are lying to us. They've been lying to us since the first day they put a feminist shoe on. So there is a ton of extremely damaging lies that have entered the public consciousness without question. The subtle one, say one that everybody knows about, is the whole vote for women thing. I hear this come up all the time, and virtually everybody in our culture has heard, oh, well, women only got the vote X number of years ago. That is what Conan Doyle says when he was referring to when he says, there's nothing so damaging as misleading as a obvious fact. And the misleading in this is a good example because it typifies the feminist lie. There is an obvious fact, but what's left out is where the lie is that men didn't get the vote either, and that the history of men not a one of power over women. It's a history of men is a one of slavery, essentially worked to death. Up until recently, the typical man worked from cradle to grave and died without any of the product of his own labor. That was really the real history of it. So they turned that little examples like the vote into portraying all human history as oppression of women by men, when in fact the history is the use of the wealthy and the powerful to lord over everybody else. And that's a far bigger story. Slavery, in one way, form or other, is always with humanity. And it's men who've been the workhorses and mules of the world.
Arthur Conan Doyle had it right. And Mark Twain said it another way. It's not what you don't know that'll get you. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
Right.
That is, and that does, it encapsulates a lot of feminism. Well, with that, we probably ought to be moving on, Steve. I'm close to running out of time, but I wanted to take a break out of my routine this evening to get this hangout on there. And as you can tell by the sloppy ass setup behind me and everything, I wasn't really totally prepared, but we are running short of time. And it'll be very, very helpful to this movement, to this cause, to the revelation of the truth to the world, to have Steve Brule at this very, very crucial conference coming up July 8th through the 10th.
Well, I'm sorry.
I was just going to ask if there was anything you wanted to add before we close, Mr. Brule.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate any donation. I know how hard it is for most men who are even interested in this issue. Most of you guys out there are dirt poor or the closest thing to it. I don't know very many wealthy, well-to-do men's rights activists. So I appreciate how hard it is for men to cough up a few bucks. And so, yeah, $1, $2, $3. I do have a Patreon account that helps with that. I think they take $1 and $2 values too. Right now it's a monthly thing, but I may adjust that as time goes on to a per video thing. But also, don't feel like that we will think anything less of anybody who doesn't contribute, because I really truly understand we all have money problems. If you can contribute, that's absolutely wonderful.
No, I should probably clarify something about that too. Look, I just came back from the PO box the other day. Yet another letter from a guy in prison, convicted of rape, swears in his letter that he didn't do it. Of course, he has no money, and I get messages like this all the time. This is not a community of wealthy men. We have a men's movement in part because they're broke and have been broken. So as hard as I press sometimes to make something like this happen, it is because I believe ultimately it will be for the benefit of all men, for us to have these events, to have them well documented, to help spread the word. It's the only answer I can think of to change the narrative and make things happen. But please don't think for a minute that I don't understand fully who's in our community. These are guys that have been beat half to death and then discarded, and they still are compassionate enough to get behind somebody like Steve, and have gotten behind ABFM, and now gotten behind An Ear for Men. And it is every cent that comes in, whether it's $1 or $100, is greatly, greatly appreciated.
Well put, Paul. And I know how generous you've been to so many efforts. So I was speaking to the audience, certainly not to you.
Oh, no, I didn't take it that way, but I just thought I had pushed pretty hard for people to donate to your trip over there to help your crowdfunder. And I was hoping that I didn't come off as unaware of just how much a lot of these guys are in bad straits.
Absolutely. And we'll we want to bring those stories through to the public consciousness. Those stories
Absolutely.
just like that. And there's a video, look for by Monday. I'm starting up some new stuff on Studio Brule, and I think the viewers will be very interested in this this next video coming out. And it does talk in that video about a man just in those situations you just talked about, dire straits, struggling to, because of the family court situation and all of the fallout of a divorce that happens. It hits men very hard, and sometimes it hits them so hard that they don't get up. So that story will be out by Monday on Studio Brule. Have a look at that. And thanks everybody for your support. And Paul, thank you for your support and encouragement in this.
Anytime for you, anytime. Well, that's it, folks. We're going to wrap things up. Thank you, Steve, for popping in here to visit with us. I enjoyed the discussion. Everybody remember, tickets are still available. International Conference on Men's Issues, 16, London, the United Kingdom, July 8th through 10th. You can still get seats there. We are going to have a blast. There's the last report I had, there's about 200 seated. So we're going to have a large audience, 22 speakers from 16 countries over 3 days, and a lot of people in the audience, like Peter Lloyd of the Daily Mail, Sargon of Akkad, you name it. A lot of people are going to be there. This is going to be an incredible event. So with that, I want to wish everybody good night. As usual, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation, even if you haven't, and we'll see you next time.